Hello, guys. So today, um, my sorry, little breath. So today, guys, I'm gonna go over Minecraft combat. In particular, I'm gonna go over weapons here. I'm not gonna be talking about potions or explosives or anything like that today. I'm just gonna be talking about the normal ranged and melee weapons. So let's go ahead and get started going. So where do we start? So the first thing here I'm going to talk about um, is with swords and axes. Now, as you know, these are the main in Minecraft, right? Main melee weapons. Now, there's often the debate, whether in the PvP community or just in general, if the better weapon choice is the axe or the sword. So let's talk about that first. So as you can see, the axe does 9 attack damage, and the sword does 7 damage. So that means that, so with this zombie here, it takes 2 critical hits, or 3 normal hits to kill a zombie. Which also has the same amount of health as a player, at least one that's not eating a golden apple or something that gives them extra parts. But just assuming you're fighting like a normal player, that's how much health you should have. Now this without armor. With the sword, it takes 1, 2, 2 hits to kill the zombie. Oh god. Okay, baby zombie, let me... Okay, I was not expecting that. Alright, so it takes 1, 2, 3 hits. Okay, so with diamond, and I assume I'd probably find the same with netherite. It does the same sort of thing there that you just saw. But safe, so I'm gonna go give myself wooden axe, and then give myself a wooden sword. Right? You'll find that it's much different. It's one interesting little thing. I'm just gonna compare this real quick. It's so as you can see, the attack damage is not the same between these 2 axes, or even these 2 swords. So pretty much what happens here in Minecraft is that with each tier of tool or weapon that you have, it scales up the damage for each type. So for swords, it starts at 4, and then it goes up to 8 with the netherite sword there. As you see, the diamond sword is 7. With axes, it works a little bit differently. You start off with 7 damage, and this is how much you get with either a wooden axe or with a golden axe. Just for comparison with the swords, you actually deal the same amount of damage with the wooden ones. Now, another thing with the swords is that they all have the same attack speed, which is 1.6. So this means it's a pretty quick weapon. It's actually the fastest melee weapon in the game, right? They all have the same speed here, so when you're going from one sword level to the next, so say if you're going from a wooden one to a diamond one, you're actually only doing any sort of benefits. You're getting more and more benefits every single time. You're not taking any sort of other negative things to compensate for that. But unlike with the axes, though, right? So I said that, you know, with the axes here, right? You know, the wooden one and the gold one do 7 damage, just more than the swords of the respective levels, right? But you know, nine. Then, so say if I was to give myself self, right? You can see this actually has the same amount of damage as a diamond axe, or even right that even my wooden axe also does the same amount of damage as my diamond sword. Basically, that's right. I'm getting off track there. So anyway, so you see, basically what happens is that while these two deal the same amount of damage, stone, iron, and diamond axes all deal 9 amount of damage. So you're only just increasing the speed of the tool and how much durability it is. You're not actually increasing, the damage. So this is kind of why I think that axes might be better as a main weapon for like early game. But like as you're progressing with your gear, and assuming like especially with the PvP situation, it may not matter as much in a normal survival world, but in a PvP situation, where you might actually prefer to have a sword because it can continuously dealing more damage. In addition to the fact that you can also stack more enchantments upon it, which is the next point here I want to talk about. Right. So swords, they have knockback, looting, sweeping edge, and fire. Right. You're probably wondering what each of these do, which each of these enchantments. So knockback. So let me give you a comparison with what it looks like on this armor stand here. I didn't realize the snow could cover the bottom of it. That's pretty cool. What it looks like without the knockback enchantment. So say if I was to just run at this here and hit it with my diamond sword, right, it knocks it back like 3 blocks, right? But so say if I take this, right, and I put this on my diamond sword here, it knocks it back way further. Now that was with knockback 2. It's a little less with knockback 1. But so I know while for some people this you may think, well, you really want to have knockback on your, do you really have knockback on your sword? And I think that's a very valid question. But to that I say, I think yes. Because think about it. So say if you're trying to fight, like a whole bunch of like zombies elements, right? Or even in certain cases, like if you're fighting, if you're going around in like a nether fortress, and you're fighting like a bunch of wither skeletons and blazes, right? You want to kill the blazes to get their blaze rods, but you may not care about killing wither skeletons, right? And they are actually like they are pretty annoying. So it's really nice to, when you can, especially if you're out in the more open parts of the stronghold that may be over the lava rivers, if you can just run at them and knock them off instead of having to constantly have someone coming at you. Especially if there's also a lot of blazes in that area, you can kind of save yourself some time by immediately getting rid of getting rid of the wither skeletons. But another useful thing here with the sword is that it also has, and I should have done this in order that I wanted to with this video. So this enchantment here is sweeping edge. So basically what that means is that swords have this sort of like unique little property. So let me show you one more. So you see how, so say if I was to hit this guy with the, with the, let me just do normal. It just hits like one. So say if I was to, I'm gonna go in here, So say if I'm gonna go in here, right, and I'm gonna try to hit these guys here. Well, you see, you can only deal damage to one mob at a time, which sometimes is useful, especially like if you say if you just got a parrot or something, you don't want to accidentally kill it. It's like I get it for like situations like that, but right. If, however, you don't, and many people don't have a pet, so say if I want to hit both of these guys, you can see this little, you can hear this even little sound, and you can see this like little, this little motion here. Right. This is a sort of sweeping attack. This basically enables you to hit a bunch of mobs with a sword. Right. You don't have to worry about hitting just one target at a time, as you might single them out with an axe. But you can hit a bunch of enemies at one time, which I think is a super helpful thing, especially if you're playing in a PvP situation where you're fighting a bunch of people at the same time, or if you're fighting a bunch of monsters together in a normal survival mode. I know I've seen plenty of Minecraft videos, as I'm sure many of you have, where people will die to a bunch of monsters in a cave, right? Because they'll only be able to hit or kill like one mob at a time. But like you said, a nice little advantage here of the sword is that you can basically hit more of those. So the nice thing with Sweeping Edge, though, right? I'm going to put this on my diamond sword. This is going to be super overpowered diamond sword by the end of this video. So say, right, basically, as you saw, it took me a few hits to kill, the zombies. But say if I was to, when you get them, come on, you get them close enough to each other. Basically, when you have this on, it means that it does more damage to the surrounding mobs that you're trying to fight at the same time. The next enchantment here is looting. Now, basically what this means, and you see there's some rotten flesh here, and I can't quite pick it up. And say, normally when you kill a zombie, you'll get probably 1 or 2 pieces of rotten flesh. Right, but if I was to kill a zombie, or really anything that has any sort of drops other than just XP, it's like, for example, like a wither skeleton, especially like if you're trying to create a wither so you can get a beacon, right? And you want to get the 3 wither skeleton skulls to make the wither. And pretty much what it allows you to do is, instead of say getting just 1 or 2, of certain resource, you could get like a little bit more, right? But not only that, it doesn't just make the amount of items you get higher. It also makes it more likely for you to get rare items. So I'm probably not going to be too lucky with it, right? But okay, well maybe that's just what I have. But the point would be that if I had looting here on this sword, let's go ahead and put it on. Put it on here just so I can show you. Okay, give at self experience bottle, say 132. Right. Give myself some XP levels real quick. Okay, that should be plenty. So I'm going to put looting here on this sword, right? And basically, it means that, like I said, not only will you get more of stuff like rotten flesh, which I know people are super enthusiastic about getting in Minecraft, but you could also, like I said, you could get the rare drops. You could get like iron or carrots or potatoes from a zombie. you'd be more likely to get something like a bow from a skeleton, whatnot. You can get some pretty cool stuff that way. The last sort of advantage here, I feel like, of a sword here is this lovely little thing called fire aspect. Now, as I'm sure many people, if you've watched popular American television or probably any other number of television types before, but especially in American media, right? You often see these sort of like big, super dramatic kind of like explosions that happen to like the bad guys or whatever, when something like blows up, like a whole building, goes kaboom, or like a plane blows up or something. Well, this is not exactly the same thing, but you can kind of recreate a little bit of that experience in Minecraft. You have a sword, and you put fire aspect on it. Well, okay, apparently I still need more. I need to replenish my experience levels. Alright. So say if I'm gonna have fire aspect, right? Let me just show you what that is real quick. And I'm sure you probably, can probably pretty intuitively understand what this does. And basically, it just sets mobs on fire. Let me go ahead and... I really like the Minecraft music, but let me go ahead and turn that off. Kind of distracting. So, it has 2 levels, and with each level, it basically means that it will deal the fire damage for a longer period of time, right? So the highest level here, like I said, is 2. So that means the first one, I think it is, I want to say like 3 or 4 ticks, which means like just a couple of seconds. And then the fire aspect 2, I think it's about 7 or 8 ticks, which means it's a little bit longer. Now, I know you may not think that that's particularly substantial, but just think about it like this, right? This creeper trying to come at me, or say that's like an opponent, right? It's going to continually suffer from taking fire damage for a longer period of time, right? Which means it's more likely to die, and if it doesn't, it means that it's probably going to need to regenerate, because the fire aspect is going to drain away its health. Not only that, it also does a lot of durability damage on any armor that they might have. So that's one thing to consider. Right. Now let's move on to axes again. And I'm sorry, I really wish I had made this a little bit more consistent here, but now axes don't have any particular exclusive enchantments that are particularly helpful in a combat situation, but they do have these 2 enchantments, Soak Touch and Fortune. Soak Touch meaning that if I was to, say, mine a leaf block with an axe that has Soak Touch on it, or any tool that does, that basically means that certain blocks you wouldn't normally be able to get, such as leaves or certain types of ores, you can actually get those in their natural form as they are. Fortune, on the other hand, is the opposite to Soak Touch. It basically means that, kind of like with looting on a sword, that essentially you just get more drops out of that block. So say, for example, if I was to mine, or say with like a pickaxe, it's not really a weapon on here. If I was to mine a diamond ore without Fortune, you think you'd just get 1 diamond, right? But with Fortune, with each level of Fortune, you'll get more and more and more diamonds. There's 3 maximum levels. It doesn't necessarily give you the same amount every time, but it basically means you have a higher propensity to get such an amount, right? But in a combat situation, either of these are particularly helpful, maybe except for particular creative such uses, but these are probably more advantageous to have on a pickaxe rather than an axe, mostly just because of like certain situations, like if you're trying to set up a trap or something, or with fortune, to just get more ores, so that way you have like extra resources to work with. But like again, on an axe, it's not particularly helpful for fighting. Now, on the other hand, both weapons here, they can both have mending and unbreaking. Both of these together will basically just mean that your sword or your axe, or really anything you put these on, any tool or weapon or armor piece that takes durability damage, it means that will basically last for a much longer time. So unbreaking, and it has 3 levels. It pretty much means that, it means that your weapon or your tool or your armor will last longer. Not indefinitely, but last longer. It pretty much reduces the chance that when you take damage of any type, that will use up durability on said item. Mending, on the other hand, it only has 1 level, and this is actually a very valuable one. So let me go ahead and put it on, say, my netherite sword here, right? I might have to give myself some more XP levels real quick. I have my netherite sword with mending on it. Alright, let me go ahead and spawn another zombie. So pretty much what this means is, so if you see like how when I was fighting with any of these other weapons here, well, I guess except for the stone axe, as you can see, it lost some durability, especially this wooden axe here. Well, pretty much these, and you see, it just lost my netherite sword just lost some durability right there, right? But you see these little XP orbs, right? Experience things. You also get them from multiple O enchanting, right? Well, pretty much means that you can sort of just like repair your item, and this is extremely helpful because it means that your weapon or your armor or your elytra or whatever you're putting it on will basically mean that you can always keep on using that, which is really nice, especially if it's a very valuable item, such as like a netherite tool or armor piece, which are very hard to come by. You have to do a lot of work to get them, or even just like a really good diamond one. It's really nice, and it saves you a lot of time from having to basically replenish that piece of gear, and you can just keep on using it as long as you're repairing it every once in a while, right? Now, this is not, mending and unbreaking may not be necessarily the most immediately helpful in a combat situation, as they don't really, have special effects or deal extra damage, but I would argue they are actually probably some of the, definitely, maybe not the most, but definitely some of the most important enchantments to have on your weapon, because in that way you can just keep on using it. You don't have to keep on pulling another one, right? Especially like if you have something like a wooden or a stone or a gold tool or weapon, right? You don't have to keep on replenishing. You don't have to go and be like, oh, let me go ahead and make myself another axe. I can just keep on using whatever I have my item, my mending. Now, these 3 enchantments, you can put any of them on your sword or your axe. These are 3 different types of damage enchantments. They'll have sort of special effects, but they're mutually exclusive. You can only have one of these on your axe or on your sword. So pretty much what each of these does. So Bane of Arthropods basically means that, so if I was to have, if I say I like to have an axe, let me just go ahead and give myself, let's just go ahead and do a few more experience levels here. So I'm going to put on this stone axe here, right? Right, so I have Bane of Arthropods on my stone axe. So let's go ahead and summon spider. Now, with anything else, right? You'll especially with even just like a really good, crit or sword hit or anything like that, you'll do a lot of damage to things such as spiders, bees, and whatnot. But with Bane of Arthropods, it basically means that you can just deal even more damage to them. Now, this sounds pretty cool, and it kind of is, but there's only like 4, 5, maybe 6 mobs in the entire game that are seriously affected by Bane of Arthropods, and they don't even have very much health anyway. So I would argue that Bane of Arthropods is not a particularly helpful enchantment. I mean, if you have it, cool, but it's not really particularly valuable, in my opinion. Now, Smite is an actually solid choice, I'd say. It's not my preferred one, and I'll get to saying it in just a minute why. But, so say if I was to put Smite on this diamond axe, this would mean that I would deal extra damage, but only to undead mobs, right? So as you see, I was able to do one normal hit. I didn't even have to crit it out. I was able to kill that baby zombie really easily, really quickly. And this is the advantage of Smite. Now, Smite, unlike Bane of Arthropods, is actually much more helpful. And that's because there's way more undead mobs that you're likely to face in this game than you are arthropod mobs, right? Again, like I said, the arthropod mobs is like what? Spiders, cave spiders, bees, silverfish, and endermites, which don't even have very much health anyway. But there's a lot of mobs that do have that are an undead mob, and a lot of them are actually quite dangerous. And as you can see, here's a list on the sides of the screen of what some of those mobs are. Right. Now, my personal favorite, and I'm sure many people would probably be very much inclined to agree that this is the best one, is sharpness. So pretty much what this does, and I'll just go ahead and show you. I'm gonna put this on my. I'll have to repair my. Give myself more speed looking again. And this is the maximum level of sharpness. This is sharpness 5. Basically how sharpness works is that it does 1 extra point of damage for the first level, and then for each level after that, it does an extra half of that. So what I mean is, sharpness 1 on a sword or axe will deal 1 extra heart, or 2 points of health. Sharpness 2 will deal an extra half heart, and so will each level after that. Now, I'm going to spawn myself another zombie. You see, it took me like about 1 or 2 hits. I think it was about 2 hits to kill this guy, but okay, well that was without the fire aspect. But pretty much what this would mean is that you deal more damage to every mob in the game, which is definitely quite a lot. I'm not going to make a list of all of them because that would be really long. The point being, I think sharpness is the best, and while it may in fact not deal as much damage to undead mobs as say Smite does, right? Smite actually has a much higher amount of damage that it does per level than sharpness does. And I don't remember exactly what that is. I might attach this to this video, maybe not. I think sharpness is a little better than Smite because you're probably going to be able to deal more damage to every mob. And especially another advantage of sharpness is in PvP situations. Like I said, Smite and Bane of Arthropods are they only work with particular particular mobs or particular monsters, right? But sharpness, like I said, is universally applicable. So if I'm fighting a player or a zombie or a wither or warden or anything, I'm going to deal more damage with my sword or axe. So that is swords and axes right there for you. So let's go ahead and move on to tridents. Now, tridents are a pretty interesting weapon in this game. Sorry, let me get myself I'm gonna drink some water real quick. Tridents are a pretty interesting weapon because they have some pretty cool abilities that they have, unlike what swords or axes might. And in comparison, in terms of, say, attack, damage, or speed, so this is, for example, an impaling trident. I'll get to that, saying what that means in just a minute here. But you can see this when I compare it to, say, let's do the netherite sword and axe, right? If I'm going to order these in terms of the amount of damage they do, right? An axe does the most amount of damage, and the sword does the least, but the sword has the highest speed, and the axe has the slowest. The trident is kind of like a little bit of the best of both, in my opinion. You can have a quick speed similar to what you can have with the sword, and you can have a high damage output like you do with an axe. Now let's get into the enchantments that a trident can have. So you see, the first one here is something called impaling. Now, if you remember what I was talking about with smite and with Bane of Arthropods, they deal more damage to certain types of mobs. Well, impaling is kind of like a version of that on tridents. And you're probably wondering, well, what mobs does this affect then? And I want to say one thing real quick. This is a Java Edition thing here. In fact, on Bedrock Edition, this will actually work differently. Pretty much what that means is that it kind of works more like sharpness for every mob, especially if they are in the rain or have any sort of water that they are in or under. But let me continue. So on Java Edition, this means, and you can kind of tell, I have two different underwater modes. So here is my okay, let's see what I'm saying. Let me find these real quick. That is a drop. Now, you think, well, shouldn't this deal more damage? Because, shouldn't I be able to, one-shot, drowns with this? And I very much would agree. I wish we could do that. But, unfortunately, on Java Edition, drowns are actually not considered to be taking extra damage under impaling. Instead, they take it under under smite. So if you want to kill drowns faster, in particular, then I would say use smite or just use regular sharpness. That being said, here's a guardian. Now, these guys, alongside of elder guardians, axolotls, all types of fish, both types of squid, and whatnot, these are considered proper underwater mobs. So this means that they're going to take more damage, or at least it should have, anyhow, from this trident here. That's impaling. Right. Now, let's see here. So then we have 3 more enchantments here. These two can go together. This one is a separate one. These are exclusive sets. So you can either have loyalty and channeling. You can have them on the same thing. Same trident here. Or you can have Riptide. It's your choice. And I'm pretty sure what Riptide does. Let me go over to some water here. Now, as you know, swimming sometimes in Minecraft can be pretty slow. Especially, if you're doing like a PvP challenge, right? You probably want to get away from whoever's trying to fight you. Especially if, you are like a manhunt or something, and you're facing a lot more people, right? There tends to be much more hunters than there are speakers. Not necessarily, but that's generally the case. At least on YouTube. Well, if that's the case, if you somehow do in fact have a trident and you decided to put Riptide on it, this all basically means that if you are in water, you can hold your trident, and instead of just throwing it like normal, something very special happens. You see, you basically just go flying. Or if you're in the normal water, you will kind of just like this little barrel. Now, this is actually especially helpful, say if it is, especially if it is raining. Wow, there's actually quite a few. Good thing I have protection in my armor. As you saw, basically just means that, especially so say if I was to let me get out something else here. So let me just show you. So if I give myself the elytra, right? I give myself some firework rockets. Say 64. Right? Well, let's go ahead and set the weather to rain. Now this would also work if it's thundering, but now unfortunately this does not work in snowy areas, unfortunately. This is again pretty limited to just pretty much the overworld. Although it does work a little bit in the end, if you do have the water bucket you placed up. So let me go ahead and see, as you saw, I was flying there, and let me just show you the little bit, right? You can kind of do these sort of things, but if you're combining this with a elytra, especially if you're doing something that is pretty late game or some kind of special one, then you have the nice little thing where instead of just doing this one little thing here, one little barrel roll, you can in fact, continuously. You can even go flying quite a bit with this. You can, you can also go really far. Actually, with Riptide 2 or 3, as you will be able to travel a lot of distance very quickly, which is very helpful for escaping a lot of situations. Now, again, you're probably not going to have your average Minecraft player using an elytra in combination with the Riptide Trident, but if you are, or if you're playing something like a PvP server, such as the Legacy, then this might be a very helpful thing for you, especially if you don't want to rely too heavily on firework rockets, especially if it's really hard to get a lot of paper or gunpowder. So this can kind of be an alternative to fire rockets. However, it is limited to only really working in the overworld and, in some cases, the end. Now, if you decide not to put Riptide on your trident, you can also have a loyalty and or channel. So pretty much what loyalty does. And let me give myself a regular trident to compare this to. Right. So with the regular trident, you know, not only does it work as a melee weapon, but it also works as a ranged weapon. Right. Now that's what a regular trident is. But if I was to say throw a loyalty, it comes back to it basically kind of works like a boomerang. Now, the really fun part, and let me go ahead and set the weather to thunder because it really only works then. And all right, so let me go ahead and summon let's say a skeleton. Right. Now, pretty much what this bad boy does, is that it sets whatever it hits, on fire. It shocks it with a full burst of, lightning, which is super cool. It actually does quite a lot of damage. Now, it is maybe not necessarily the easiest thing to get by any means, because tridents are in fact pretty rare, pretty hard to get on Java Edition. But if I was to buy these, okay, I need to really give myself experience bottle 60. Okay, so that should be fine. So like I said, you can actually combine loyalty and channeling with a trident. And this is super cool because you can basically just, like I said, you can combine the superpowers of both of these together. So let me just go ahead and come on, zombie. I'm just gonna, if you could come over here, that would be really nice for this little demonstration. Which we want to in the valley. Well, it pretty much works like Thor's hammer, essentially, right? You get to strike stuff down with lightning, and it comes back to you. So it's like a warrior. If you don't even know what Norse mythology is, you can just think of it as a electrified boomerang that does a lot of damage. The famous quote of the year, or I don't know. Kind of a dumb little thing there. Alright. Now, on any type of trident, regardless of what you put on it. Oh yeah, by the way, I mentioned, forgot to mention this. Impaling, you can actually put an impaling on, you can put it on either a Riptide or loyalty / channeling trident. The stack, you cannot put these together though. That's the only limitation. But you can also put mending and unbreaking. So again, that basically means that it'll either last longer, it's less likely to use up durability damage when when you hit something with it or use it. And mending, again, basically just means you can keep on using your trident. So let's go ahead and go on to the ranged weapons. Now, as you know, ranged weapons are not the only ones that exist in this game. Alright. Oh, I actually got that iron sword there. That's pretty cool. So in this game, there are 3 main ranged weapons. Now, technically, you also have stuff like snowballs, eggs, but for now, we're just going to ignore those. So, the first weapon here is a classic. It is the bow. So, you see, I have some arrows here, and this I'm just going to just practice shooting some targets here. That was actually a pretty good shot, I'd say. Right. Now, the bow, it has, it's pretty quick. You can fire quite a bit of shots in quite a bit of time. It's a pretty stable weapon. It's also extremely cheap and very easy to get. You can either get it by killing something like a skeleton, killing some spiders to get their string, and then combining that with a few sticks to make it, or by trading with like a villager in a village. Now the next weapon here is the crossbow. These bad boys were added in 1.14. They have some pretty cool stuff to them. I think that they're probably more similar to the bow than they are disalike. But there is a few things that you probably are used to. So as you can see, right, I have this crossbow fully charged, and yet I'm still able to run around at full speed. Now, if you saw that, I can't really run around at full speed, when I have this bow completely charged. But I can do it with this crossbow. And another advantage of having a crossbow is that you can hold these shots, right? You can basically store up whatever sort of projectile you want to in a crossbow. In fact, they have more projectile types than a bow does. Because bows, they only work with arrows, spectral arrows, and any tipped arrows. But, But with crossbows, they also have this nice little thing where they work with fire retardants. Now, with these, now as you see, unfortunately, I don't actually know how to craft the better fire rockets. But nice little thing with this is actually a very useful and not terribly expensive sort of weapon that you can have. There's a wandering trader here. I don't know. It's not the best trades by any means, but especially if you're like a super flat player, it's gonna be pretty cool. I've played some super flat challenges myself. Wow. The nice thing you can do this is that you can fire off these, and not only do they work just as a kind of little cool thing, especially if you have like some particular kind of patterns or whatever that you want to work, and you want to kind of like shoot some off to the sky. It's kind of like a celebration for something. But they're also pretty good for PvP, or even just general combat situations. You're able to normally hit a lot of mobs within a particular radius of it, especially if they have a really sort of big bang kind of effect, which they often do. So let's go into the last weapon. So, as you know, I already talked about the tridents, and I already talked about how they work as a ranged weapon. But just another example here, right? You can also hit stuff very well the same. Now, unfortunately, like with a bow, you can't run around with a trident. Right? You can have it up, ready to be thrown, but you can't move around. You can't hold, you can't save it. But it's one sort of advantage here is that it is dual purpose. So I can I can hit this creeper. I can hit it with a melee attack and a ranged one. This is something that no other weapon in the game has. It's a very sort of very, very, very helpful kind of thing. But I myself, as much as I like tridents, I would say this is not as good. Mostly just due to the fact that tridents are very hard to get, very rare, and kind of expensive. But if you have a bow or crossbow, you know, you can easily craft it. There's lots of ways to access it. You can get it either from a chest or from a mob drop. But you can only get tridents from a mob drop, and that's only from Drowned. And like I said, you know, Drowns are kind of already annoying. It's hard to find anyway. So, in fact, they have actually a smaller spawn rate on Java Edition than they do on Bedrock. I myself personally prefer the crossbow. And like I said, I prefer it because you can hold the shots. Now let's get into the enchantments. Now crossbows, they have 3 enchantments, one of which you can put on any type of crossbow. And pretty much what this means is that, say, I'm gonna go ahead and put this on here. I'm gonna just compare it to the normal. So as you see, it takes quite a bit of time to load up a regular crossbow. But the quick charge one, see, it was just like, I can fire off a lot of shots really, really quickly. And that's like insanely helpful. Especially combining with the fact that I may be wrong. Correct me in the comment section if I am. But I think that I think it actually is that the crossbow, at least regardless if you're putting enchantments on it or not, actually I think does more damage per like projectile than your average bow does. Now I think that changes maybe because if like you put power and flame on a bow, I think it would actually be the bow that does more damage per shot. But if you're talking about the getting lots of damage off really quickly without having, especially if you don't have a sort of fire aspect sword or a lava bucket or some other kind of you know, fiery weapon on hand, I would argue that the crossbow is a little better here. Another thing it has here, and this is another sort of controversial one, it's not the most controversial Minecraft enchantment thing here, but it's between these 2 enchantments here. So you see piercing and multi-shot. So each of these 2 things does sort of the same thing, but in different ways. So let me demonstrate. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull up this normal crossbow. I'm gonna go ahead and give myself some more XP levels. So this one's gonna have multi-shot on it, and the other one that already affected already has quick charge on it. Again, I'm gonna put piercing on it. Now, there's some baby zombies out there, but it's fine. So, perfect opportunity, maybe, we'll see, is that, how did that guy hit? Is that, multi-shot, it shoots, instead of shooting 1 arrow, it does 3 arrows. Or, if you have fire rockets, you know, it fires off 3 of them, which is definitely pretty helpful. But I must say, I myself, I prefer piercing. That's because most of the time I don't use fire rockets on my crossbow, especially because I'm mostly trying to save those fire rockets for my elytra. Especially also because then again, I think it is that a lot of like the really powerful fire rockets you'd work with are quite expensive. They require quite a lot of gunpowder. And I don't normally have a creeper farm or something like that on hand. I kind of prefer to sort of conserve some amount of resources. So I would say, I myself, like I said, I prefer piercing. Now pretty much what piercing does is it does a few things. One, while it may seem like it just shoots 1 arrow, and it is correct that it does shoot just 1 arrow, it also shoots it through. It also shoots it through. So as you see, with multi-shot, right? I just fire off a couple shots at something, but I can pick up the arrow if it happens to not hit the mob. But with piercing, right? It doesn't matter if the arrow hit my target or not. I can still reuse the arrow. Now that doesn't work with this effect does not work with, you know, with fire rockets, but as you see there's the other really cool thing in that it does. Not only does it just sort of just like go through the mob, you can reuse the arrow, but it also goes through multiple mobs. So multi-shot, I know that people say like multi-shot's better, and I can understand why. I mean, you can hit a bunch of stuff that's right close up to each other, and you're often in situations perhaps where you're trying to hit a bunch of targets with something, especially if they're all like right next to each other, and you would want to hit them, or you want to perhaps direct all 3 arrows at one target at the same time if you're close enough. But with piercing, you know, you get the projectiles back, and especially if you combine this with, say, mending or unbreaking, or both of them, you can basically, you don't have to worry, unlike with a bow, where you can either have to choose between infinity or mending, right? And then basically, do you just keep on getting a new bow or projectiles? With the piercing crossbow, you basically get to keep on using the arrows and the crossbow. And you also have a very fast rate of fire. So that's why I'd say that it is, at least in my opinion, the superior ranged weapon. Now I was talking about bows. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into those enchantments. So it has 4 exclusive enchantments. The first one here is Flame. Now, this is a pretty cool one, I'd say. So as you know, you saw what the fire aspect sword did earlier. Well, basically, Flame works as that, but for bows. And this is definitely a pretty overpowered enchantment, because not only are you hitting, you know, mobs from, or any sort of enemy from far away, but you're also dealing a lot of fire damage to them. Now, if you're a really good shot, you could get, say, 1, 2, 3, however many shots on your opponent, and they'll keep on constantly taking both projectile damage and fire damage, which is really annoying and really difficult for a lot of people, and even especially mobs, to contend with. Now, Punch is another sort of enchantment here that works very similarly to its to a sword, and this is basically just knockback on a bow. So that means instead of like hitting the mob back a little bit, you'll hit the stuff off to quite some distance. Now this is pretty helpful, pretty practical, especially if you don't really want to risk. So say if you don't really want to risk, you know, fighting a bunch of enemies up close with a sword, especially if they're more powerful than you, or if there's a lot of them, or if it's a very close sort of environment. Instead, you know, you can just keep on, you know, hitting them with some projectiles, whether if you're running or not, and they have nothing to do other than just keep on suffering through it. Especially if you also combine other stuff like Flame on it, then you'll knock them back, so it's harder for them to catch up to you or get close enough to hit you, as well as dealing quite a bit of damage. This next one here is Power. This again is another sort of sword / axe mimicking enchantment here. This basically means that it kind of works as sharpness, but for a bow. It just does more damage per shot. And if they power 4 or 5 bow, you deal quite a substantial amount of damage, or even just one arrow. Right? And this works in conjunction with tipped arrows. So if I was to have a, harming or poison tipped, arrow, then this is going to deal an insane amount of damage. So this is really, really helpful if you're fighting, really powerful monsters such as the Warden with a Wither, or if you're fighting other players in a PvP situation that have a lot of really good armor. This will kind of help you deal with them, as you're able to do a lot more damage, kind of keep your damage output in scale with whatever sort of protection they may have. Now, all 3 of these weapons, the bow, crossbow, and the trident, they can all use unbreaking and midnight. I already explained these, so I think you kind of probably get the gist. You can just keep on using your ranged weapons as well. Now there's one weapon that we have left, and I would say, it's probably one of my favorites. Well, it's definitely not my most favorite, but I think it's definitely cool. And this is the mace. Now, let me show you the basic premise of it before I get into talking about how enchantments work. So, basically what this does is, essentially, that if I wanted to hit something that's really far down beneath myself, but I don't want to just fire off a shot with my bow or fire an explosive down there, but I want to do this in a particularly daredevil sort of person, but I also really want to show off, and I also really just want to kill my enemies really quickly. Now, this is the weapon for, if that is the type of person that you are. Now, pretty much what this lovely weapon does is that it will just smash into whatever enemy or enemies that you have. So if you know when I was talking about a sweeping edge with the swords, that can hit multiple mobs. With the mace, it can also essentially hit multiple mobs by dealing sort of knockback thing. As you saw, one armor stand sort of remained there. We had one go all the way over here, one all the way over here somehow, and crazily enough, we even got one all over here. Now imagine if instead of on a normal sort of plane here, imagine if you were on top of a mountain, right? Or say if you were in the end dimension, right? If you're like a big speedrunner or something, you have a bunch of hunters chasing after you, and they're all right next to each other, and they don't know that you have a mace. Well, you can basically just hit all of them at the same time and deal a massive amount of damage. The really nice thing with the mace, too, as you saw, I didn't take any fall damage whatsoever. Now, if you don't hit the target, you in fact will take all the fall damage. So this is a very much high risk, high reward sort of weapon. It's really hard to get, but it is definitely super rewarding to use. So as you see, I missed the hit there, I took the fall damage. So let's get into enchantments. So the first one here is Breach. Now pretty much what this one does is that, so say that was an enemy player that I wanted to assassinate. Well, if I had Breach on my mace, right, this means that when I fall and I deal the damage to them, it's going to go through their armor. Right, so if that was a player right there, they would very most certainly be dead right now. Right, if they weren't already from the previous smash attack. This is definitely really cool. This is insanely useful for any sort of PvP situation. It's not particularly practical in a normal survival instance, or if you're fighting a lot of monsters, as most monsters unless you're playing with some kind of particular mods, do not have any armor on them, and if they do, it's usually very low quality armor anyway, so this would pretty much not be as much worth your time. That's just maximum level. This is 4, so this just does a lot more damage. Again, each level does a little bit more damage through the armor. This is Breach Force, it does a lot of damage. Alternatively, so exclusive enchantments, you can choose Density. Now, Density, so as you know, or may not know, pretty much the further I fall with, with a mace. So let me compare something. So say if that was, again, this is an enemy player, maybe a different one this time, right? Maybe like their friend that just came by to try to pick up their loot or something, and I somehow got all the way back up here. Well, if I had Density on my mace, pretty much what this would mean is that regardless of if the thing I'm hitting has armor or not, or what type it is, that essentially this will basically kind of stack onto the thing of me being high. So as I go higher, each block I deal even more damage. Well, this basically just says you can just multiply that and deal even more damage per level. Alright, so that would be quite a lot of damage there. This is, I would say, the better choice, in my opinion, but I still think Breach is a very solid one. It really just depends if you're playing a normal survival world, or if you're playing against other players. As I think that this one here is better for player versus E, or like environments, mobs. This one is better for PvP. Now, let me go ahead and show you something else. So, you don't have to simply just go up like a ladder, or, go up a water stream or something like that. You could also kind of create this sort of a similar sort of effect, maybe not to the same effect, with some other lovely item called Wind Charge. Now both of these items, the mace and wind charges, were added in 1.21 in the trial chambers, which is a very cool structure, in my opinion. It's very, you get some pretty cool loot from it. Now, what these you can do is a bunch of things. So let me go ahead and show you an example. So, if I'm going to click on this, did it break that? Okay, well, in some cases, if it's like armor standard. But the idea should be that, so say if I go over here to this armor standard, okay, never mind. Essentially what it should do is kind of give like a little breeze, a little push to, move any sort of mobs away, or anything that you hit it for. This can also be used as a redstone item, but this is not really the point of this video. We can talk about some other time. Well, you can recreate, instead of having, like I said, instead of having to go up to that, you can also do sort of a little jump here thing too. You can combine this with having a higher advantage. So you could go even higher and do even more damage. Right. I'm kind of just gonna practice a few shots here. These are not particularly the best ones, but you kind of get a little bit of an idea of what it is. That was, okay, that was kind of, Now, say if you don't feel particularly confident using wind charges, or you just don't really want to use them, or if you're simply just trying to save your inventory space, whatever the matter may be, you can also try to get the super rare enchantment. In fact, this enchantment can only be found in the trial chambers themselves as part of the loot. You cannot get it from the enchanting table, unlike these. This is Wind Burst. Now, it works very similarly to wind charges here, right? But instead of having to use another item, basically the mace already has this sort of effect on it. so you don't have to worry about it. It's really handy. Just give me a quick. Right, there we go. So instead, what this will do is instead of simply just lifting you up a few blocks at one time with an item already used up, it's like this. As you see, you know, I keep on going back up. If you manage to get the hits on something at least, right? You'll keep on going up and up and up, and you can basically keep on stacking the amount of damage that you're getting. Now, I didn't realize that would completely, you know, take away all the enchantments there. I didn't mean for that to happen. But there are 3 levels of this thing. So the first level, as I showed you, was Wind Burst 1. This basically means that you go flying back into the air about 7 blocks before you can't come back down and smash into your opponent again. Now, Wind Burst 2. Let's see, what does this thing do? I get launched up about 14 blocks, which is an insane amount of distance if you ask me. You can deal a massive amount of damage with that. You already do a lot of damage even just for like, even just 8, 9, 10 blocks, right? But you can do even more now. Now, and the really fun one, probably the one that anyone who's a PvP connoisseur really wants to know. This is the maximum level. This is Wind Burst 3. If you just want to take a guess as to how high I go ahead and pause this video, take a guess, write it down, whatever, and then unpause it, and let's just see how high does this thing go. And see, I do a whopping 21 levels, which is like crazy. And if I was to combine this, as in fact you can, so just a minute here. Let's go ahead and take take the density. Okay, apparently still need a few more XP levels. So give that self experience bottom 60. Need more than that. There we go. If I was to combine these, then you get the epic ultimate weapon, essentially. Especially if you combine this with the same ending and breaking. And you even go to higher heights if you're really willing to. Right? So this is a higher point. See if I can land this hit. Then this would deal a massive amount of damage as I basically keep on going up and down. So right, well, unfortunately, that was the best example there, but the point would be that, I could basically just keep on coming back up and down, smashing into my enemies, or you into your enemies, whatever they may be, and deal a massive amount of damage. Now you need to really be careful with them because you saw I took some fall damage there. I didn't really get the hits. So you just have to be really aware about that. It's a really practice with it. If you really want to become good with the mace, I'd recommend practicing a lot beforehand, especially with stuff like zombies or any other sort of common monster in a survival or creative world, just so you kind of get the feel of how how the mob works. So that is it all for this video. But I have one last thing I want to show you. This is not a weapon. This is a nice little thing. Let's see if you can guess what this is going to be. Well, if you guessed water bug clutch, be correct. So let's see if I can land. If I can land this hit. If I can land this. Yeah. So, anyways, have you enjoyed this? If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, notification bell. It really means a lot to me. I'm trying to reach 30 subscribers before Christmas. I'm currently at 29. So if I can get one person to subscribe, that would be awesome. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you later. Bye.